OWS fam, the nation, my dudes and dudettes, Sharp Football Analysis Nation, welcome, welcome. We are into week 15 in the inaugural season of Searching for Ceiling. Thanks for joining us. If you're new here, drop a like, drop a subscribe to the channel. I am Hilow from One Week Season. I will be joined shortly by Hribar from Sharp Football Analysis. And as per the intro, we hunt for that hidden ceiling here on this show. So those of you who've been around for a while, thank you again for tuning in. We are back, baby, and we are about to jump into the week 15 main slate. We do have the Saturday 3-gamer. If you're looking for game breakdowns for that, I know Rich has dug into those over at Sharp Football. I have dug into those over at One Week Season. Go check that stuff out. But our focus for today is on the week 15 main slate. So with that, welcome, and let's search for ceiling.
1 week season.
There's my guy, Mr. Rich Hribar. How we doing today, dude?
We're doing good, man. Friday, week 15, the holidays are coming. You're trying to juggle some stuff around. You were nice. You acquiesced it. I needed to just kick a couple hours to get some stuff done. And here we are, man. We weren't going to leave this on the table, though.
Heck no, man. We got to bring it, and we got to bring the heat hard. So we've got a very interesting slate. We're going to take a look at it in a minute, but I want to hear real quickly before we dive into the meat and potatoes here, kind of what your thoughts are on this very, very unique slate where every single morning game has a low game total and every single afternoon spot has like the game of the week type upside. How are you approaching that in this really weird slate?
Yeah, it's kind of a unique week because we have like a mini Thanksgiving slate, and I think we're just going to have these every year, right? Because there's no college football. So like the NFL is going to use this as an opportunity every year now, I think, to jam us with 3 Saturday games. It's kind of a weird Saturday slate too, not to just like go deep on it, but like you've got all these backup quarterbacks. There aren't a lot of salary restrictions on that Saturday slate, depending what you want to do. But what it does is it took away 3 games off of a main slate because there's no buys this week. And then when you look at the primetime games that are remaining, we've got Lamar Jackson against the Jaguars on Sunday night. We've got Jalen Hurts against the Seahawks on Monday night. And I think we have our 3rd main slate in a row where paying up at quarterback doesn't look to be the optimal plan again.
Yeah. There are some very, very interesting names, particularly in that mid-range. We have a 6K Matthew Stafford, who now finally we are seeing that touchdown regression. 10 touchdowns in the last 3 games. In the other side of that game, we've got Sam Howell priced at only 6,300. So definite fireworks there. That said, like, might guys like Josh Allen go kind of overlooked on this spot? We'll talk about that here shortly. But yeah, there's a lot of different ways then you can go on the slate, and there's not a ton of salary to make it happen. So it's a very, very interesting dynamic slate. So with that, let's take a look at what we got going on here on this slate. Obviously, we alluded to the fact that we don't have a lot of high game totals. We have the Miami Dolphins taking on the New York Jets at home, where Miami is averaging over 30 points per game. They are 9.5-point favorites. Small game total, 37.5. I want to talk about this next game, which I want to make sure that we get to, but that's the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the Packers, a small game total, or a small spread, 3.5 points, 42.5 game total. The Texans, with the Davis Mills experience, minus Nico Collins, minus Tank Dell, are 4-point dogs at Tennessee, 37-point game total. We got the Giants and the Saints. This is another interesting one that I hope we can get to. Small game total, 39 points. Relatively large spread, but we've got some defenses here that do some very particular things that we need to talk about, I think. The Falcons and the Panthers, 33.5. We did it, man. We've got our 6th game of 33 points or fewer. That's great. Yeah, just thank you, 2023 season. We got the Bears traveling to the Browns. Another very interesting one, low game total, but some interesting pieces in it, 38.0. The Chiefs and the Patriots, 37.0. That we did not ever think we were going to see a Chiefs game with 37-point game total, but here we are. And now we get to what we alluded to in the meat potatoes, the 49ers and the Cardinals, a massive 12-point road favorites, game total of 48.5. And then you've got the Commanders and the Rams, 50.5, and the Cowboys and the Bills at 50.0. seeing all that and the way that salary is setting up this week, I kind of get this feeling that that last game on the slate, that Dallas Cowboys and Buffalo Bills game, might go a little bit overlooked. So I want to start there,
Mhm.
Rich. What are you seeing from this spot?
Yeah, I think this game is interesting because I think internally gamers want to play Cowboys and Bills. I think this slate in particular makes it hard because the individual pieces that you want to play do hinder some of the other things that, probably a lot of gamers are going to do on this slate. So,
Yeah.
you've got, an expensive Josh Allen, you've got an expensive Dak Prescott, CD Lamb is 9,200 on both sites. And the hardest thing, the biggest roadblock for me in this game is trying to come up with objective reasons to want to play these Bills, right? Like
Yeah.
it's not, no one stands out from an evidence-based lens, which is where I operate outside of Josh Allen, because Josh Allen can still get you there. The ball can get spread around. He has rushing equity. He has touchdown equity. So like he's interesting. So do you do something creative in this game spot? Do you do like a Josh Allen with Cowboys pieces? Is that like a
Mhm.
way that you can kind of uniquely stack this game? But it's not even an objectively great spot for Josh Allen. I mean, we've seen the Chiefs pressure him on a season high rate of dropbacks last week, and he's been one of the most impacted quarterbacks by pressure this season. He's actually completed fewer than 60% of his passes in 3 of his past 4 games. And the biggest thing is no one on his team is getting open and beating man coverage. And now
Yeah.
this aggressive, Cowboys defense, they're third in the rate in man coverage in the NFL. Stephon Diggs is not priced down, right? From what we've seen this back half of the season. I mean, he has 3 single-digit PPR point games over the past month. He has his lowest yards per out run against man coverage since he joined the Buffalo Bills, and we know Gabe Davis isn't a man beater. He's got one of his
Yeah.
touchdowns this year have come against man coverage. How do we stack Josh Allen? Who objectively stands out to you? What is calling to us on this Buffalo Bill side to say like these guys are great plays? Do you have some of the? Can you help me out here?
The most interesting aspect of this spot were the offensive tendencies that we saw last week from the Buffalo Bills with Dawson Knox back.
Yep.
They basically went straight back to heavy rates of 12 personnel. And when you look at Josh Allen's efficiencies in 12 personnel versus 11 personnel, which they were almost playing exclusively 11 with Dawson Knox
Right.
out, he sees almost a 30% increase to almost across the board his efficiency metrics when throwing from 12 personnel versus 11. We also have seen Stephon Diggs see a significant boost to his efficiency in 12 because you take an additional wide receiver off the field and he becomes more of this point of emphasis in this offense. So I'm actually a little bit interested um, in the Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs. I think that on paper, it's very difficult to make that stand because, especially when we're talking like comparing Stephon Diggs and CD Lamb, who are the 2 primary pieces in this game, comparing them to like Christian McCaffrey, who they're priced around, it's
Mhm.
very difficult to click those wide receivers' names, right? But if we look at like, does this game carry the potential to absolutely leave every other game on the slate in its dust? I think it does because we look at the Rams and the Commanders. That game environment, we'll talk a little bit more about it here shortly. That game environment is expected to be elite, but it's more so elite for the Rams than it is for the Commanders as
Right.
far as like their individual pieces. Same thing with San Francisco and Arizona. Like the fact that Arizona is not just rolling over and dying this season, like is better for their opponent than it is for like their players. So those games to me feel a lot more one-sided, whereas this one has the chances to, you add in like the desperation factor of the Bills. They need basically to win out. They're at 6-6, 6-7.
Yeah.
A game behind like 5 other teams in the AFC who are at 7-6. They need this game. Like they cannot afford to drop this game. The Cowboys, on the other hand, are playing for the number 1 seed in the NFC. So like this game carries such high playoff implications that I think that added desperation factor with the skill position players that this game has carries immense upside on the slate. And I don't think the field is necessarily going to be treating it as such. So when I see the spot, it's more of like, I want to overstack and dive in. I think you can do that with like Josh Allen, Steph Diggs, something like bringing it back with a Brandon Cooks, where like, and the defensive tendencies of the Bills leads me to believe that we might see CeeDee Lamb be doubled over the middle of the field and rolled extra coverage when he's on the perimeter. That if we get Brandon Cooks in against cover 3 or against man coverage, whereas CeeDee Lamb is going to be blanketed, I think that he carries some significant upside. Jake Ferguson, we know, has the robust red zone role. So like, I want to be diving fully into this game environment. And then if I'm not doing that, I'm okay like setting it aside and be like, hey, this game also could, because it has 2 of the top 6, 7 on paper defenses. It could also play to the under. So I want to be diving fully in, or I kind of am more of the leave it alone. That's kind of how I'm reading this situation.
Yeah, I do have confidence in the Dallas side, just because they've been, not only because they've just been so hot. I mean, you factor in the Bills are going to lose, they're losing 2 more starters on defense. Yeah. And they've been able to patchwork this thing. And the reason they've been able to patchwork it, they've only allowed 6.3 yards per pass attempt over their past 6 games. It's 8th in the NFL. They're 12th in passing points allowed per attempt, just below the Cowboys. And the reason they've been able to kind of get through is they've still had an elite pass rush. So losing H.A. Epineza is a big loss. And then also the one quarterback in the NFL that has absolutely not been impacted by pressure this year is Dak Prescott.
Yeah.
Leads the NFL in completion rate by almost 20% above the base rate. He has an 8.4 yards per pass attempt when he's under pressure, by far the highest rate in the NFL, 2.5 yards above the base rate. So I still think Dallas is going to get there. I think the Dallas side is going to get there. I think they've consistently, what they're doing with CeeDee Lamb, I think makes it hard for defenses to take him away. I mean, since this like hot streak's gone on and they came out of the bye and they basically hatched this plan where they were like, you know what, we cannot just like run this thing through defense and Tony Pollard. Like, we have to open up this offense. And they came out from it. CeeDee Lamb's been playing literally 50-50 inside, outside. Like, they have structured this offense around his versatility. And it's made him a better fantasy asset too, because it's given him access to, I say, like these higher cholesterol targets, these boundary targets. They're not just slot. He just doesn't have to win from the slot.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I still think he's a good play. Obviously, when you talk about like, if you're making me pick between one of the guys, either CeeDee Lamb or Christian McCaffrey this week, I mean, listen, one of those guys is playing the Arizona Cardinals. So, but I mean, in tournament settings, though, I mean, I do have confidence in the Dallas side. You mentioned Brandon Cooks as a guy you could bring in doubles or ISO with a mini Buffalo side, and then Jake Ferguson at a tight end position, which inherently has a low bar. He has so much red zone equity that you can get there through touchdowns with Jake Ferguson. So I do have confidence in the Dallas side. The Buffalo side is where I keep like wondering, how does it get there? And does this game end up like last week, where they face a similar defense and approach to what like Spags does and the what Dan Quinn's going to do? Is it going to be a situation where they stall out again? And that's what they did against the Chiefs after that first quarter.
Yeah. There's very few situations where I actually pay attention to home road scoring splits. Dallas might be one of them. Do you make anything of the fact that the Cowboys are averaging almost 40 points per game at home, but only 23.7 on the road?
Yeah, it's one of those things you kind of have to look at. They did score 33 in Carolina when they did their most recent kind of road game, and some of their other road games are earlier in the season. They did score 40 in the season opener, although they were two of them were defensive touchdowns.
Defensive, yeah.
Yeah, and then they had the San Francisco game. I mean, it's kind of weird. It's kind of hard, right? Like, so those things are always tough. I do know that this offense, since the bye, and they've only played 2 road games since the bye, and they've been good, and the offense has been fine in those games.
Okay. I just wanted to throw that out there. I mean,
there's definitely a thing of a heater with them at home. And the Dolphins were one of those teams too, until you realize they need an offensive line still to score points.
Yeah. We'll talk about that here shortly. Any other, by the ways on what could be one of the sneakier game environments this week?
No, I mean, I still don't know like how I want to handle James Cook. He was a guy I almost had 100% of last week, and
yeah, you and me both.
and he smashed, but I feel like we were still shorted, right? Like, I feel like we were still shorted.
Well,
I mean, he was the offense. I mean, 80 yards in the first quarter. He had 6 of 8 backfield touches in the first quarter. And then the rest of the game, he had 9 of 18 backfield touches. He hasn't gone over 56% of backfield touches over the past month. I know he's getting more design stuff and first read stuff. But we got every Ty Johnson and Latavius Murray snap and touch like an angel is losing his wings.
A fantasy football angel just freaking lost his wings.
Because he looks
What
great. James Cook looks amazing per touch right now. Like the last
Yeah.
month, he's looked absolutely electric.
Mhm. What was interesting to me is we saw you talked about like kind of the mastery, we'll say, of Spags. We saw him roll like cornerback coverage onto James Cook in the second half. Which did you notice that when you're watching the tape of that game?
No, not because I didn't see him, James Cook on the field. So like, I had trouble
Yeah.
diagnosing it. No,
Yeah, I
I mean
tuned out.
it's the one thing that gives me like pause the Bills is that you mentioned they got Dawson Knox back and the field just shrunk on them again.
Yeah.
Like everything, like Stephon Diggs, ADOT. I mean, like what happened? Like, and I know, understand, like you have you kind of highlighted this last week when we talked about that game. You were like, oh, the pressure that Spags is going to send. It's going to be a quick passing game for the Bills. You were all over it.
Mhm.
And it's what we also saw earlier in the season too, when they were in this 12 personnel. And I brought up umbrage on the show a couple times about it. Like, this is not the way you play offense with Josh Allen.
Yeah. Let the man just be that slinger, dude. There is the upside potential with Josh Allen. The bull case here is that he's
Mhm.
getting more design runs, and
Yep.
all that good stuff is still present. But yeah, this is a spot where like if Josh Allen is hitting a 85-90% outcome, that is so much higher than all the other quarterbacks on the slate. So I want to
Mhm.
be able to capture that. And if that happens, it's likeliest to come through Steph Diggs, potentially Gabe Davis if he catches a route against zone. We'll see. I'm not interested in either tight ends. I think you can go James Cook in addition to that as well. But I kind of want to just be diving in fully into this game, or kind of leaving it alone because they're like like we talked about, like it's harder to click these guys than it is a guy like Christian McCaffrey who's priced right around him. We have the wide receivers in the Rams game that are priced
Right.
down 7,300, 7,800. So there's a lot of other more appetizing routes to go here. But I do think it is worth mentioning that if this
Yeah.
game hits, it could hit really, really hard.
Yeah, I think you have to small field this for sure. Like, there's got to be
Yeah.
some small field onslaughts on this, just by default of what you said, the 90th percentile outcome.
Yep. We know that the afternoon games, I kind of gave a little bit of a lead in to the 49ers and the Cardinals and the Commanders and the Rams. It's probably the Commanders and the Rams that as a game environment brings more upside. You want to talk about that one next?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think that one just offers a lot more accessibility for gamers in the way
Yeah.
like versatility. We also have on the Commander side like just a lot of cheaper pieces. Obviously, now we know Brian Robinson's not going to play, so it
Mhm.
unlocks Antonio Gibson as either like this pivot point to Ezekiel Elliott or just like another cheap guy to get you access to another Rams wide receiver.
Yeah.
You also have Curtis Samuel in a spot that, the Rams don't put a lot of pressure on the quarterback. So maybe it's not like the ball's getting jammed to him, but they have been significantly worse to slot wide receivers and boundary wide receivers. So we have a lot of cheaper bringbacks that we can kind of go on. And then we have like this situation with the Rams against this Commanders defense where we only have 4 more weeks to play guys against this Commanders defense.
Yeah.
Every season we get to a point of this where like there's just the defense, whether it's through injuries or whatever, like we just know like they can't there's just nothing they can do, right? Like and that's where we've been at the Commanders for a while.
Yeah.
Like personnel wise, and especially once they traded Montez Sweat and Chase Young, like they haven't even smelled the quarterback outside of Tommy.
No.
Tommy DeVito's the only dude they put pressure on since they've made those trades. And they just don't have the personnel. They don't have the pieces to combat anything opposing offenses are doing right now.
Yeah. We talked about Matthew Stafford and how he's quietly putting together one of his better seasons, not from a statistical
And
standpoint,
Sean
but like,
McVay.
yeah, and Sean McVay. What they are doing with what they have on this team has been nothing short of impressive. Both on the offensive and the defensive side of the ball. I mean, we were targeting this defense as like a laughing stock of the best ball land coming into the season. They had like 70% of their defensive players coming into their season were either rookies or undrafted free agents. We were like laughing, but like they are what they're doing, and they're doing it through heavy rates of cover 2, cover 3, prevent style defense. They're forcing teams to march the field. They don't want to give up explosives. What that does is provide them more opportunities to be disruptive, which they're more or less like doing. So yeah, that notwithstanding, that's probably why they're more susceptible over the middle of the field. Curtis Samuel, very, very interesting. We also have Tutu Atwell, who in this game was concussed last week.
Yep.
Probably not going to play. We saw Demarcus Robinson come in, score a touchdown,
In a revenge
and
game.
in a revenge game, and we saw him like the target in the like Hail Mary attempt at the end of the game. There's some interesting components there, but my primary point of interest in this spot is Matthew Stafford, Kyron Williams, and I side with Cooper Kupp. Either Cooper Kupp or Puka can get it done. They can both get it done in this spot, but Cooper Kupp has the feel, watching that game last weekend, he has the feel of, for the first time in a while, he is being like the point of emphasis on this team. And that's what we saw last week, is like he had the year that he had because, like, yeah, he's awesome and he's great, but he was being schemed looks and he was being schemed open. And that's kind of what we have been lacking from him. It's been more of this. We have more weapons that we can distribute the ball. But last week, I saw them finally, again, emphasizing Cooper Kupp and saying, like, we're going to create some space for you, bruh. Go do your thing now in the space. So if that is the case, Cooper Kupp has as much ceiling as anybody on the slate. So that's where I lean. Obviously, Puka is very, very viable in this spot as well. But I like the quarterback, running back, wide receiver stack. Basically, this could be like a situation. I mean, we look at the Rams; they've scored 31 points or more in each of their last 3 games. So this offense is humming a little bit. And in this spot against this defense, they have legitimate 4, 5, 6 touchdown upside. So the quarterback, running back, wide receiver kind of gives you access to all of those scores potentially. So I like that. What are you feeling about the situation between the 2 Rams wide receivers and then the Rams kind of in general?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing with this rant is you want to play all of these guys. You want to play everybody. So how can we do that? You know, who do we pick? Who do we choose from? I do kind of also edge Cooper Kupp. Just he's led the team in targets and receptions the past 2 games. He looked healthy, and maybe that was just an internal signal too over that stretch where he was down, that they obviously weren't scheming stuff open for him because he wasn't healthy, he wasn't right, and maybe they knew that throughout the week, and he's been gutting it through. But last week he definitely looked the part more than he had since he first came back. So very positive signals, especially timely for this week. I have no problem with also just saying, yeah, Puka could get there too. I really don't. Washington has literally been a pick your poison team. I mean, they are allowing the most yards per game to opposing outside wide receivers. That Puka's playing like 68% of his snaps outside, more than Kupp. But guess what? They've also allowed the highest touchdown rate to opposing slot receivers, 9.2 yards per target to slot receivers. It's kind of just everyone, man. Everyone gets there. And then they've allowed 5 straight top 10 scoring running backs. Ramondre Stevenson, Kenneth Walker, Saquon Barkley, Tony Pollard, Devin Achane. Like, we're not like those are all solid players, the good players, but it's not like they're all world beaters in fantasy football this year either. And now they're facing Kyron Williams, who literally has the best offensive role in the NFL outside of Christian McCaffrey. And he's 1,800 cheaper on DraftKings than Christian McCaffrey. This is where it gets interesting, I think, with Kyron Williams, because he becomes either a potential leverage point in tournaments versus what's going to be popular. Stafford is going to be popular, and Rams wide receivers going to be popular, if not both. And not that Kyron's not going to be unpopular. He is going to be popular, but he becomes leverage, and then also probably in addition to Stafford stacks where people maybe don't get there, like you said, to play the wide receiver with the running back this week. And then also, if you look at the Rams, what they've done, and they've done this even since the bye when they've been up, is when they're ahead, especially in the second half, they are running the hell out of the football. They have a 42% drop back rate ahead in the second half this season. That's 25th in the NFL. We can go back to both Arizona Cardinals games where it kind of looked like onslaught situations for the Rams. And Stafford did get there the second game against the Cardinals because he threw a couple touchdowns to Tyler Higbee. Kyron had the other one. But they just, if McVay is if you're lining up and you're not stopping the run this year, McVay has shown like they will just keep running it.
Yep. Yeah. Super interesting. Do you have a lean? Is Kyron more viable in your opinion, than Matthew Stafford in the spot? I think I haven't looked at ownership. I've been kind of
Well,
all
here's the fun
into
part
the
is that the two quarterbacks you want to play, it's inverse correlation, right? Because if you play Purdy, you play Kyron, and then you play Stafford, you play McCaffrey, right? Like that's kind of like the internal thing. Like you just like, I'm just gonna mix and match that. But I actually think you can play both running backs with both quarterbacks.
Yeah. I was thinking the same thing. I'm heavily interested in that. And like we'll get to the 49ers here in a minute, but it's like again another pick your
But a lot of
poison.
gamers are probably going to do that, right? Like because
Yeah.
you're going to want to access McCaffrey, you're going to access to Kyron. I imagine they're just going to cross stack those guys, right?
Yeah. That would probably be the prevailing strategy. Yeah, from a like observations of the field, like theoretical perspective, how we expect them to behave. That's probably going to be the prevailing strategy. Yeah, you're probably right there. I haven't thought about that much, so that's a good shout.
Because those are going to be
Anything?
those are going to be the two most popular quarterbacks.
Yeah, yeah, that's very interesting. Any other thoughts on either of those teams in that game environment?
No, like that. I mean, Antonio Gibson becomes like this, really low salary guy you can get access to. Like I said, obviously, a lot of people started the week like believing we would just have Zeke. The last
Mhm.
time Brian Robinson left the game before the bye, Gibson played 31 snaps. Chris Rodriguez just 12. There is like maybe some potential volatility. You would say like, all right, like Gibson's a free agent. They might want to see what they have in Chris Rodriguez, but remember,
Yeah.
Ron Rivera is probably also not going to be here next year.
Yeah.
So, like, what the hell does he care about seeing what Chris Rodriguez has to have? Also, Chris Rodriguez has run 12 pass routes the entire season, 12 more than you and I. So, in a game where the road dogs negative game script, it's hard to not just see Gibson have like this kind of opportunity in front of him to have like this really large run out.
Yeah, and that kind of leads us back to full circle there of why I think my exposure to this game is just going to be on the Rams. I don't think you need to force the Washington bring back. I mean, we've had very few instances of a Washington pass catcher seeing double digit looks this season.
Right.
We've had very just they're concentrated in the sense that like we know who's going to be on the field, but they're not concentrated from the sense of we know where the production is going to go. So I kind of just say take the guesswork out of it. Yeah, they're cheap, but there's other cheap spots on the slate that carry significant ceiling. We'll talk about those here shortly. San Francisco, man, Brandon Ayuk, play Christian McCaffrey. The one person that I would probably put fourth in the tier of like San Francisco skill position players is probably Deebo Samuel, because he is the guy that's like schemed usage and heavily involved against defenses that are able to generate pressure. That is not the Arizona Cardinals. So I would expect to see George Kittle in routes at a higher rate. We've been off of him for the past 2 or 3 weeks because they've played defenses that are capable of generating pressure. That is not the case this week. Heavy zone, we're going to see Brandon Ayuk probably have time to have his routes develop downfield. So this is a spot where those three guys like McCaffrey, Brandon Ayuk, and George Kittle are more so my interest level is kind of in that tier, and Deebo kind of falls to the bottom. Is it the same for you, or are you seeing something different here?
No, I'm pretty much lockstep. I mean, it's interesting, the 49ers in general, because this transition that Brock Purdy's had now. There was a point to start the season where Brock Purdy was getting there as like a lower end QB1. He was hyper efficient. He was throwing, 2 to 3 touchdowns per game, not really ever flirting with 300 yards. And the dude is putting up some demon numbers like this last 6 weeks. Like we're starting to see the Brock Purdy like 320s, the 350s, the 368 last week. Like the dude didn't even play a clean game last week and threw it for a career high in yardage. And I know some of that's like catch and run stuff, but he actually is he hit the long ball to Deebo, he had a nice one to Kittle.
That was a nice little dime breadbasket pass.
Oh yeah,
Deebo.
beauty.
Yeah, that was butter.
And you've got this team that just is not pressuring the quarterback, like you said. They're 31st, Arizona. They're just a passive defense in general. They don't play man coverage. They don't blitz. They just aren't aggressive. Like they're very passive. It's kind of funny because they have a very passive kind of mentality, it seems like, for a head coach and quarterback as well. It feels like it's all just breeding around that whole team. Yeah. When Brock Purdy hasn't been pressured this year, like, dude, I can't even like read some of these numbers out loud. Like they're just like, it's like,
please do.
It's just stupid. It's like video game stuff, dude.
Yeah.
When Brock Purdy has been pressured this year, he's completing 79% of his passes. 11.1 yards per pass attempt, 17 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. He's got 132 quarterback rating. When he hasn't been pressured, the guy, when he's typically targeting Brandon Ayuk, like in these spots, when he's able to not get pressured, right? From a clean pocket, Brandon Ayuk leads the 49ers with a 28% team target share, 12.9 air yards per target. When Brock Purdy has a clean pocket, 21% of his throws are going into that intermediate window, the 10 to 19 yard window. Guess who leads the NFL in receiving yards in that window? Brandon Ayuk, 490 receiving yards in that window. Man, it just feels like a really good spot for Brandon Ayuk for sure. He's definitely the guy I want to glom onto outside of, Christian McCaffrey. Because like I'm trying to figure out, like, are we just getting too cute not playing? Like, is it just like too obvious of a spot? I know we live in this world with a salary cap. He is very expensive, but man, the Arizona Cardinals have just given up the bag to running backs literally every week. They're 150 yards per scrimmage, 31st in the NFL. They face a league high 31.6 backfield touches per game. They're 31st in rushing points allowed to running backs. They're also 25th in receiving points allowed to running backs. When these teams played in week 4, he had 180 yards and 4 touchdowns.
Like 50 burger.
That's... Man, I mean, and it's scary. It's scary to leave him off of teams this week, it feels like.
Yeah, 100%. Knowing that, are you more interested in playing Ayuk with him, with or without Brock Purdy?
Well, let me ask you this. How much do you believe in the narrative that maybe is surrounding San Francisco and maybe Kyle Shanahan, and maybe, do you think, obviously we don't know, we don't know his internal hubris on the situation, but it seems like the 49ers are tired of talking about how good the public thinks Brock Purdy is. And do you think like we're seeing like this just blitzkrieg and Kyle Shanahan's just like, hey, if you don't think he's that good, now watch him put up the 300 to 400 yards a week?
I don't know. I honestly hadn't thought about that.
Because it's happening, like his numbers the past month, like since they've been out of the bye, have been absolutely just crazy, man. There's like no restrictor plate at all on Brock Purdy right now. It feels like the 49ers are sticking their finger in the air saying like, oh, you just think this dude's a product of us? Like,
yeah. And Shanahan is one of those coaches like a Sean Payton that kind of plays into like getting his players the accolades and getting them their bonuses and whatever the case may be. Like he is one of those guys that could, like, is he pushing the Brock Purdy MVP narrative? I don't know. Like that could be something going on behind the scenes. That's very interesting as well.
Yeah, so kind of fun. I mean, it's nothing you can really like stock and like make part of your DFS. Like I'm going to play this dude because the 49ers want to get him MVP. But I have just been looking at his usage like this past month and like how the 49ers have been calling games. And it's just like, man, are they like, I feel like internally they're up to something here.
Yeah, that's very interesting. That makes me even more interested in like playing CMC and Brandon Ayuk. I mean, Brandon Ayuk can go for 6 for 150 and 2 or 1 in this spot. CMC very clearly has 50 burger within his range of outcomes. Yeah, this is very interesting. Very interesting spot. I am going to look into that.
Are you playing any Cardinals? Any Cardinals interesting?
I don't think so. I think maybe Michael Wilson is maybe interesting. I mean, the San Francisco defense is a little banged up. Yeah. They've had some injuries over the previous 3 weeks, especially on the back end. So I don't know. Maybe Michael Wilson. I mean, it feels a little chasey, right? Going to Michael Wilson after he put up 77-2 against the 49ers last time.
Right.
But he is like, probably, I would love to play Greg Dortch. I would love for Michael Wilson to be out.
Yeah, we're probably,
we're probably we're past
our torch Dortch has probably been extinguished.
Yeah, that's too bad too. I don't think so. No, you can't go to James Conner.
No.
I mean, Marquise Brown is not set up well in this spot. Yeah, I don't think so. Oh God, who else?
Trey
McBride would not be in consideration. Yeah, I don't think you can, honestly. I don't want to.
I don't think you need pushback either on this side. The 49ers are getting on their own. They've covered in 9 straight division games. Absolutely bonkers. They've been a Death Star, man. They've been, since the bye, they've been an absolute Death Star again.
Yeah. Dig that. I'm really going to dig into playing Brandon Ayuk with Christian McCaffrey here. I think that is very interesting. I think you could go. Would you consider something like Brock Purdy, Christian McCaffrey, Brandon Ayuk, and George Kittle? Would you ever consider that in the spot?
I would probably leave one off, but I do like the idea of McCaffrey and Ayuk together, or one or the other, right? Like I think like the Rams situation, you shouldn't be deterred by playing McCaffrey or Kyron Williams just because you have a piece of the passing game.
Yeah, 100%.
I think it's where we both
buy
arrive.
that. Yeah, I will buy that as well. Let us now. I mentioned two potential very, very interesting spots. The first was the Buccaneers and the Packers, and I also think, well, maybe three. The Giants and the Saints. There for one particular reason. We'll talk to here shortly, and the other is Chicago and Cleveland, which on the surface looks kind of gross. The Bears have been playing a lot better on defense of late. But they're still giving up downfield passing. And with Joe Flacco, who is the downfield passer in like over the past decade, that's very, very interesting. So I'll let you pick our route here. Which of those games, or if you have another one you want to talk about as well, let's go to one of these earlier games.
Yeah, I mean, I love Packers Bucks.
Okay.
And you know, we had Jordan Love fail on prime time, which was great for this, obviously this spot. He's in like that, we talked about that nebulous price zone, where he's right near Stafford as a potential pivot. He's a little under Purdy, almost the same price as Howell. Like people were starting to get on board. He failed, I think, against a frisky Giants defense that's been actually a lot better the past month than people probably realize. So I like going back to this. Bucs defense is just so banged up, and they're just giving up so many passing yards that it's hard not to really be interested in the Packers side. And the reason we also love the Bucs in these game environments is the Buccaneers only give the football to two players. And that's what makes it so good. We know who to bring back with the Buccaneers. We play Rashad Wright and we play Mike Evans. And Mike Evans is in this amazing flop lag spot too. We'll see if Jair Xander plays. He log some limited practices. But in Green Bay
might come back as well.
Yeah, Green Bay is playing a lot of cover three, a lot of single high stuff, and they're third in the NFL in rate of cover three. Mike Evans has already faced the number 1 and number 2 teams in rate of cover three, and he in those games had 6 for 70 and 2 touchdowns and 7 for 162 and a touchdown. But really, it's just about a usage stance. Like we know the Buccaneers are going to give the ball to Rashad White and they're going to give it to Mike Evans. Chris Godwin's banged up. I saw he hasn't been practicing again. So we have our inherent bringbacks here, and then we've got what we want to do offensively with the Packers because we don't know if Aaron Jones can play. It looks like he's going to be up, and they're going to probably. And if you follow the Packers at all, and I know you do, they are a very precautious team with players that are injured. So like expecting Aaron Jones to come back and get like 20 touches is probably not in the range of outcomes. So we've got Jaden Reed, we've got Romeo Doubs. Obviously, people are going to get to Jaden Reed because of his price and them playing on Monday night. But Romeo Doubs, I think, is very interesting in this particular matchup as a guy I don't think anyone's going to play.
Mm-hmm. This is very, and I've spent a lot of time on this game. I broke it down, and obviously I'm a Packers fan. I 100% everything you said there accurate. I don't think that AJ Dillon is going to play because they are extreme. I mean, and I couldn't even find this anywhere. Is it his dominant hand that he broke his thumb?
I don't know if I didn't see what hand it was. I saw he was going to try to practice today, but I have not seen exactly what hand it was.
I couldn't find it anywhere, man. I was like, I was pulling my hair out trying to find it, but regardless, like one, we have Aaron Jones coming back from 3 missed games. I'd expect him to play here. Mm-hmm. In that same vein, I would expect AJ Dillon to be out. In that same vein, I would expect Christian Watson to be out. Mm-hmm. We also have Dontavian Wicks, who has been a legitimate target earner in this offense in a okay A-dot role. Like he is a relatively deep A-dot type guy. He has a more unknowns regarding his injury. Like I was trying to find, is it a high ankle sprain? Is it a low ankle sprain? Is it a contort? Like what happened to this dude? I've watched the play. It looks high ankle, but who knows? He practiced in a limited fashion after missing Wednesday. Wednesday was only a walkthrough. Again, this team holds everything close to their chest. But there could be a situation where Aaron Jones plays not in a full capacity. We have AJ Dillon out. We have Christian Watson out. Potentially even Dontavian Wicks out. So you're talking about Romeo Dobbs on the perimeter in a more or less prototypical X-type role. He's not a deep A-dot guy. He has a robust red zone role. We have Jaden Reed, who is like being utilized as I don't want to compare him to Deebo Samuel because Deebo Samuel has like one of Deebo Samuel's quads is the same size as both of Jaden Reed's.
Also, Jaden Reed can play real wide receiver, Packers.
He can. I'm waiting for it too. And that's another thing is like last week he had like a 2 point something ADOT. I think it was because, and watching that game, I think it was because of Wink and his pressure. I think they were trying to use him as the outlet. Is he going to run more routes this week? I would hope so. But yeah, it's like they have Romeo Dobbs, they have Jaden Reed in this schemed usage demi short area role. And then could it be Malik Heath if Dontavian Wicks is out? And Malik Heath is a guy that can play a downfield type Christian Watson-esque type role for this team. Ole Miss product. We know that he's been around like this. Malik Heath is very, very interesting to me. He's bare minimum price at $3K, and they've got a rookie tight end, the second string rookie tight end, who's not necessarily a target earner. So like, where are these targets going? I think Malik Heath and I think Jaden Reed are probably my highest interest in the spot. And I love this game environment, just like you. What do you have to say about that? Like, there's so much uncertainty here, but I think that's a place for us to place a little bit of leveraged bets here.
Yeah, and everyone's cheaper. So if you fail, you've got what you need to swap off of outside of the $2, and like they're not even like egregiously priced. Like I'm talking about White and Evans. It's not like they're so overpriced, but they do carry some salary. But I mean, all the Packers, because they played on Monday night, are really cheap. So if they fail, like kind of what you need to do. I mean, this is the perfect 1:00 game to stack. Like literally, it's like everything I look for in a 1:00 game to stack.
100%.
So I mean, I don't want to keep I don't want to pun the love stuff, but like I am in love with this game a little bit. And like I said, I mean, I think I don't know if I'm going to get the Otten, but I mean, even Tucker Kraft's not even off hands in this game.
Yeah,
like as a guy you can stack with Love. There's just a lot of ways. I definitely probably will have Love double stacks though for sure with either an Evans or a White or maybe a full onslaught of this game. Because the Packers have just been like the past month been just giving up production to running backs. And we know that, Rachaad White just carries this major offensive equity. So like he's another one of these guys that's priced in an area where like a lot of gamers don't get to because the meta of the slate is going to be to get McCaffrey, to get Kyron Williams, to probably either play a Gibson or an Elliott, right, at running as your RB2. Use that salary to get Rams wide receivers or another wide receiver you can pay. That's literally going to be the top-down construction, though. And that running back that's 7-1, I think he and Bijan Robinson like look like the most fun like guys to play in that price range because I just don't think a lot of gamers are going to be shopping in that particular grocery aisle this week.
Getting real gross here. What say you about Mr. Patrick Taylor? Under the umbrella of the context of that discussion we had about the state of this backfield.
Well, I think the problem with it is if Aaron Jones is up, and even if he's limited, the significant touches would still be Aaron Jones's, right?
Yeah.
So if you're gonna play Patrick Taylor, the idea is like you luck box into a touchdown. But like if they're inside the 5, is that an Aaron Jones touch?
Yeah. I would expect, based on my read on the situation, that Patrick Taylor might be the 2-minute drill back.
He is. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
He has been with Jones out.
Yeah. And I mean, we could, just play. I don't know. It's thin. I
like Malik Heath more than I like Patrick Taylor.
All right. Okay. Well, I'll concede that. All right.
I can give him Malik Heath more than Patrick Taylor.
Yeah.
I mean, the Bucs are just getting crushed in the pass game, though. I mean, it was a bummer to see the field kind of get to Drake London by default last week because I was so all over him. It was cool because he was still sub 5% on FanDuel, which was great. And I mean, everyone knows the Bucs on the outside, these outside wide receivers, like they just haven't stopped anybody.
Yeah, and they're getting a little bit healthier over the middle. Vita Vea is still on the injury report, but they're expected to be without Carlton Davis in the secondary. They do have Jamel Dean back, but they got back Devin White and Levante David. Levante David last week, and they're getting back Devin White this week. So those are major contributors to their run defense, and that's why they had kind of slipped over the past 3 or 4 weeks against the run is teams were just able, they didn't see those imposing linebackers up the middle. And Vita Vea has been on the injury report. Yeah, there another nod to the upside in the passing game there. Anything else to say in that one?
No, I just said that's my favorite early game though.
There are 2 spots in those other 2 games, the Chicago and the Cleveland game and the Giants and the Saints game, that I just want to highlight real quick. These are more one-off type plays.
Yeah.
But if the field, and again, I haven't looked at ownership, but I have this feeling like David Njoku's coming off a 2-touchdown game. I have a feeling that the field is probably going to get there. I was all over Amari Cooper last week. All over him. Amari Cooper, and I brought it back with Evan Ingram. Was like, this is the perfect, most leveraged situation I could ever ask for. And I went all into that situation. Evan Ingram,
one of those guys smashed. The other guy should have.
The other guy had 14 freaking targets. He only caught half of them. But what is very interesting to me about this spot is Chicago on the surface over the last 6 weeks has been a much improved defense. That said, their defensive ADOT is still very deep, and we have Joe Flacco coming to town, or I guess Chicago's coming to their town, whatever. I digress. And Amari Cooper now, I think, pairs very, very interestingly with the incentives that are in Joe Flacco's new contract that he just signed. It's like $250K bonus for making the playoffs. It's like $500 for making the divisional or the conference round. And it's like $2 million for winning the Super Bowl. So like, this dude is just, this might be his last hurrah, and they are just letting him sling it. And Amari Cooper, he saw 5 targets to 1 of Elijah Moore before departing 2 weeks ago. Yep. And then he comes back and backs it up with 14 targets last week. And he's priced at only $6K in this nebulous range of wide receiver pricing. I don't think the field's going to get to. What say you about that play?
Yeah, it's I love the volume shout on that for large field, because I think the opportunity is going to be there. I mean, he's been targeted on 33% of his routes from Flacco. The Bears have been kind of a sneaky good defense. Only 2 wide receivers this season have hit 70 yards in a game against them this year, and only 1 has gone over 77 yards. That was Mike Evans. And I think Mike Evans had a 90-yard catch in that game, maybe.
Yeah, something like that.
That was like week 2. And it feels like another season ago at this point. But I do like the volume shot, right? Like because anytime you get a wide receiver pricing that, like even if people say like I'm not going to play him because of the matchup, I'm okay with just throwing volume at a wide receiver because you only need a couple plays from a wide receiver on his targets to get there. So I have no issue with that at all.
The second one that's highly interesting to me is one Rashid Shaheed, who appears likely to return this week. And he's playing a Wink Martindale defense who he's going to see a lot of single high and cover 1 against, and is not the primary emphasis of the defense probably, which is going to be Chris Olave. Any interest in any of these New Orleans pass catchers in the spot?
Yeah, I've been actually trying to follow this today before we got on, and to see if Olave practiced. He picked up a late ankle injury.
Yeah.
Because obviously, it's kind of a one or one half of this. Like I want to really be in on Olave if he's healthy, and if I know he's going to be available to play. So against the blitz, Derek Carr has actually been incredible. And like people won't probably believe this because Derek Carr, but he's second in the NFL in completion rate against the blitz. He is averaging 8.2 yards per pass attempt against the blitz. That's 4th in the NFL. He's a 5.1% touchdown rate against the blitz. That's 12th in the NFL. Against the blitz, Olave, 32% of the team targets, 42% of the air yards, 2.94 yards per route run. Only A.J. Brown and Keenan Allen have more receiving yards against the blitz than Chris Olave this season. Also, he's got amazing man coverage splits, which you're going to get in the Wink Martindale defense. The Giants also have been completely terrible against opposing wide receiver ones. But also, if he were to miss, Rashid Shaheed comes back and now comes back into this role where he can kind of actually get targets, which has kind of been the bugaboo for Rashid Shaheed, like to this point in his career.
No Taysom, potentially no Olave.
So then if we catch Rashid Shaheed in this role where perfunctory, he has to line up and be like this wide receiver 1, then he becomes immensely interesting as well. So I've been trying to follow that throughout the day. I haven't seen any updates on Olave practicing yet today. but he did miss practice the last 2 days. But man, very interested in this spot. And I know it's kind of point chasing. You don't have to, I think, have a bring back, but if you were to do a mini, I don't think it's necessarily wrong to be towards the Wandale stuff that happened on Monday night.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, I mean, look at the Saints. Look where the Saints give up all their receiver production. It's all slot receivers. 51% of the catches they've allowed to wide receivers this year have gone to the slot. It's the second highest rate in the NFL. So I don't think you need to. I just think if the salary becomes that much of a problem and you had to pick a guy, it would be that. It looks like Darren Waller might try to play though too. So I mean, listen, we've tried. I'm not suggesting any Giants pieces. I'm just saying if you had to. There's a note about this game though, and I wish I would have stocked it more last week because I wrote about it in the worksheet. And when Taysom Hill ended up being declared out on Saturday, I said screw it because I did the inverse. Remember, I told you 2 weeks ago, I pulled Alvin Kamara from a bunch of lineups when who was up? I'm trying to remember who came back. And I was like, oh, well, since he's back, I'm going to play. I'm going to pull him from it was Olave. Olave was a concussion protocol.
Yeah.
I was like, all right, I'm going to scale down my Kamara, and he got there. Last week, Taysom Hill is declared out. I'm going to ramp up my Kamara, but I even wrote this note, and I kicked myself for doing it. Look at Alvin Kamara's usage in wins and losses and when the Saints are ahead on the scoreboard and not. Like, there are stark splits versus Alvin Kamara's usage in wins and losses and when they're ahead on the scoreboard. And we have the Saints as a home favorite here. Maybe the magic of Tommy DeVito will push him. But I will probably be coming in lighter on Kamara this week because of that, because of those notes. In wins, he's only averaging 3.7 catches per game, 28 yards per receiving. In those games, only a 65%, 65%, and 57% of the backfield touches. In the losses, 85%, 76%, 83%, 77% of the backfield touches. And inherently, that makes sense, right?
Yeah.
Like, so with them being taller home favorites, even against the Giants, who can allow a running back to get there through efficiency, still probably just a noteworthy nugget that I kicked myself for last week, not, kind of embedding in my brain with Alvin Kamara.
Yeah, I'm most interested in Rashid Shaheed. I think you look at Derek Carr's target rates against man coverage this season. It's like it was Michael Thomas and it was Chris Olave. Both were seeing a target 30% of the time or more against man coverage. Rashid Shaheed, 18%. That was third on the team behind those top two guys, but it was still higher. His target rate was higher against man coverage than it was against zone. So I think there is upside there. His price is only 4,300, something like that. And he gets you access to upside at one of these cheap guys to let you play the CMCs plus Brandon Ayuk plus, one of the wide receivers in for the Rams. I like the profile.
I got the 5-minute update if you want to see it. I just pulled it up 5 minutes ago. Dennis Allen said Chris Olave will be questionable right up to game time and will not practice today.
Good.
So there it is. It's open. But Rashid Shaheed is practicing. He already practiced Wednesday and Thursday. So we will not know up until lineup lock, not lineup lock, but inactives at 11:30 Eastern on Sunday morning about Chris Olave.
Perfect. All right, I'm locking Rashid Shaheed. Next question. Let's go. We got 5 minutes left. Let's go to out the door or any other interesting spots. I'll throw it over to you.
Yeah, I don't know about interesting spots. I mean, this Texans thing's just a bummer. It's just a huge letdown. Like, it feels like D. Humber just can't be denied. I know it's not the old Texans defense, but now to me, in a game script where they're going to be able to get him touches. Like I said, you like Bijan Robinson as in that kind of area, just because, the Panthers and their touchdown equity, a lot of their running backs. But other than that, like, I think I'm pretty much lockstep in kind of what we've kind of focused on. Like, those are the game environments. Those are the players that matter to me the most. And I'm going to be building around a lot of the things we discussed.
Any interest, Noah Brown, Dalton Schultz with Nico probably out, with Tank Dell out against a pass funnel defense?
Very mild, just with the Davis Mills. And who was a guy that we don't have to run away from. Like, it's not like a situation where it's like this, this guy that's unknown. We've seen him play 2 years, and he had fleeting moments of success.
YOLO Chucker. Yeah.
But also, like, this offensive line was already so bad. And, like,
Laremy Tunsil, George Fant.
against this defensive front too, because like this defensive front, the one thing about the Titans, and they showed it, like if you don't have an adequate offensive line versus these guys, like Jeffrey Simmons and Autry, like
Yeah.
these guys can be a pain in your ass, and like that. And Tua had no shot on Monday night with all those backup linemen. So I don't have like a major pushback on anyone's at like that price point, like taking a shot on it. I would love to see some pushback from the Texan side, especially if you're going to dabble at all with like DeAndre Hopkins or anything.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's also worth note that both George Fant and Laramie Tunsil have been on the injury report. I think that George Fant is probably going to miss this week, where I think Laramie Tunsil is probably going to play, which is going to affect their run game. It's going to affect their efficiency. It's going to affect Davis Mills being kept upright. Yeah, there's and that kind of all combines to a feeling that we might see like increased pass rate. I mean, this Texans team, like we've talked about Bobby Slowick ad nauseum here. But this Texans team is near league average in pace. They're near league average in scoring. They're near league average in pass attempts per game. It's like pass rate over expectation. Like you name it. This on paper, this team is league average. So you remove CJ Stroud. I don't know. Noah Brown's only 5K. Dalton Schultz is sub 5K. Maybe. We'll see. I just want to throw it out there. Any other spots of interest? I know you said no, but maybe something popped up there. Well, let's talk about real quick before we get out of here. What do you make of this Kansas City New England game?
I mean, this Chiefs offense, we've seen continuously just the roadblocks that they have. And, now you lose another core piece from that offense, which was Isaiah Pacheco, which they were leaning on Isaiah Pacheco as like a functional part of this offense. So we do have a little bit of like the Jerick McKinnon run out. The one positive thing that you see is like they finally have, maybe because they've been forced into it, like 82% route rate for Rashee Rice last week. Previous season high was 69%. Like, they finally figure out they just have to have this kid on the field. That's where we are. Where are you on the Zeke stuff? I mean, like to me, Zeke feels like a prototypical tournament fade, but I will say, if you go back to last year, Ramondre, this was like the same thing. We kept playing Ramondre Stevenson for these same reasons that we would want to play Ezekiel Elliott. Though, like Ramondre Stevenson wasn't doing anything with his catches last year, but like they kept dumping it off to him, and he kept just getting the football. So I mean, it's like, and the Chiefs have been kind of a team we've targeted for running back production. So, man, here we are in the year week 15, 2023. Is Ezekiel Elliott the guy we needed?
Oh my God, I sure hope not. But it's very, very difficult to write off the fact that he saw 30 running back opportunities last week, including 8 targets. No other. He's not listed as a running back. I mean, Ty Montgomery is the quote unquote backup running back on this team right now. He only played 6 snaps.
Mm-hmm.
That's ridiculous. So like, I mean, I don't know, dude, I hate it, but at the same time, it might make sense. That is also what gives me a little bit more interest in guys like Rashee Rice and guys like Amari Cooper, because they're priced in that same range. And basically now you're just saying, I'm gonna make a pure pivot because for me, the field is going to one of Kyron Williams, one of Christian McCaffrey plus Zeke. Like that is very clear and evident where the field is going.
Yes.
So if I'm considering Zeke, it would be maybe with all 3 of them as a 3 running back build.
3 running back build, yeah.
Yeah, and in that case, now you're talking about pure pivot versus guys like Amari Cooper, guys like Rashee Rice. I don't know. I mean, 30 running back opportunities is very difficult to just write off. In the same time, that came in a positive game environment against the Pittsburgh Steelers team that was not moving the football. There's a lot of nuance to that discussion. What kind of workload do we expect if they're trailing for the whole game? But those dump offs, man, those add up. If you're seeing 6 to 8 of them, they for sure add up. So I don't know. I'll probably have some interest. I'm going to be thinking about ways to play him differently than the field, I think. And I think 3 running back builds might be one of the answers. Another answer is to play him not with CMC and Kyron, and I don't really want to do that. So I don't know. I don't know the answer.
I mean, leaving either of those guys out of any lineup, out of a lineup completely feels real tough.
It feels sketch, right? Yeah. So I don't know. Check back a 1 week season for my end around, because that will be a primary discussion point The end around is where I go into all the game theory stuff.
Love it.
Yeah. So with that, man, thanks again for coming back. For those who are new here, we do this every week. Typically, we run this at noon Eastern, and we should be back to that normal time next week. Come join us, hang out, drop any questions. We should be able to get to those on. We did not get to this one. Reach out on our Twitter. You know where to find us, dude. We'll get that answered for you. But he's Rich. I am Hilow, and this was Searching for Ceiling. Until next time, y'all.
1 week season.